Joined in studio by Sarah. Sarah, thanks for coming back in. We're going to do, today actually I think we're just going to do one question, is that right?
So we had one question, loads in it.
Loads in it. We had a bumper interview there and actually we had to make a choice.
Yeah.
And the choice is either cut the interview or just do one question.
Yeah.
But let's just do one question because it is a good one. We jump in?
Let's do it.
Hi there, Eoin and all the podcast crew at Prosperous. I just have a question with regard to investing, and I suppose it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Gradually, I think, and I hope I speak for many people when I realise that we're Irish people now, we're becoming more aware not to leave our money sitting in the Irish bank account as it's earning next to nothing there, especially with inflation levels so high. However, I'm not of the opinion that I can get rich quick by turning towards alternatives online. I've been doing a lot of research, however, into institutions like Raisin Bank, Trade Republic, and Trading 212, I think, is another platform. And my research is throwing up that these are highly regulated banking institutions online. My deposits up to a lump sum of generally €50,000 in many of the cases are protected by the European Deposit Guarantee Scheme. What's not to like about this method of investing? It seems to be relatively safe. There are fixed rates for up to a year or so. Many of them offer rates of 4% per annum. Is this something you would recommend, or what's the downside? Does it seem too good to be true? Thanks very much for your help.
It's a really interesting question because it's one that comes at me all the time. I'm not going to talk about specifics about individual companies and which platforms are this or whatever else. So let's just give it a very generalist advice on this. When you're looking at putting money into a bank, first of all, it's not investing. He used the word investing. You're not investing in a bank. A bank is a short-term vehicle. Credit union, on post, bank, they're short-term vehicles, and that's what they do. And even if the rates are up at 4%, right, that's a good return on a deposit account. But all ships rise with rising water, or whatever that phrase is I'm looking for. If you're expecting to get 4% on deposit, well, then it's in an environment where you would expect shares or equity to do better than that again.
Yeah.
Okay. And it mightn't happen this year, or it mightn't happen in the given year, but over time, people are rewarded for taking risk, right, over long periods of time. And that's just the way economics works. That's just the way the finance world works.
Yeah.
So the less risk you take over long periods of time, the less return you're going to get. The more risk you take, the more potential return you're going to get.
Yeah.
And they all move in line with each other. When one goes up, the other goes up, and all boats rise. Is that what the words? I can't think of that phrase. But anyway.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what we have to be careful of is sometimes the headline rate looks really, really good, and compared to what we've been used to for the last 10 or 15 years, it looks great. But it's still only a short-term vehicle. And I don't care what way you look at it, it's still a short-term vehicle. Okay. But when you're trying to decide what bank you want to put your money in for the short term, what you have to be careful of is, and he alluded to it there about the government guarantee scheme. That's the first thing you need to look for. When we walk down the street in Ireland, you can see the banks, you can know the names, and you know they're regulated by the Irish Central Bank, which means the Irish government guarantee scheme covers them. And what that covers a person for is, if that bank were to fail, your first €100,000 in the bank, he said 50, but it's actually 100. The first €100,000 that you have deposited with the bank is covered by the government if all else fails. Okay? The local government will do it. But that's not a unique thing to Ireland. That's a European rule. And in Germany, they have the same deposit guarantee scheme, and it's insured, if you want to use that word, by the German government. In France, it's the French government. So the first thing you need to check is, does the government deposit guarantee scheme apply to the bank you're about to put your money into?
Yeah.
Okay. And if it's a European, if it's regulated in a country somewhere in Europe, you can be fairly sure it is.
Okay.
But also ask the question.
Yeah.
Right. So send an email and say, or if it's not all over the documentation, ask the question.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then you've got the same security with that bank as you would with a bank here for your first €100,000. Okay. But the other thing you need to be careful of is the government guarantee scheme, only deposit guarantee scheme, only covers retail depositors. Okay, so if you put your money in, or I put my money in, grand, it's covered. Yeah. But say I take some money from the Prosperous bank account. Now I'm a business customer. I'm not an individual customer. And it's not the same. The legislation is different. The governments only protect the retail, the individual investor. Yeah. They don't usually cover corporates. Okay, so sometimes what happens with these banks is, and that's why sometimes corporate interest rates are higher
Yeah.
than retail interest rates or individual interest rates are. Some of these companies, what they do is they take everybody's money, they put it together collectively, and they'll take thousands of people, they'll put it together collectively, and then they'll lodge it into a bank. But they'll lodge it into a bank, but because they've put it all together in one pot,
Yeah.
now they've become a corporate customer.
Okay.
And they're no longer a retail customer, and you might be covered by the deposit guarantee scheme. So
Yeah.
step one is, what country is
Yeah.
it regulated in? Is it covered by the government guarantee scheme? And are you going to be treated as a retail or a corporate investor
Yeah.
when you put the money in, or a corporate depositor when you put the money in? And if it's not all over the website, I would be trying to get engaged with them by email or whatever way they're communicating with you, and try and get something in writing to answer
Yeah.
those questions. But once you're covered by those things, it's the same as investing with, or investing is the wrong word for a bank account, and he put it in my head. But it's the same as putting money into a bank here as it is with one of the ones across Europe.
Okay.
It's the same protections are in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is yeah, if you're going to use it for short term, use it for short term. Grand, they're good
Yeah.
rates. But if you're going to thinking about putting it away for 10 years or
Yeah, the
20
rules
years,
apply.
the same
Yeah.
rule applies. The 5-year rule applies, and that's the way it works.
Yeah.
We're only doing one question today.
We are.
You're looking for more, Sarah?
Yeah, always looking for your questions, suggestions. If you have ideas of topics you'd like to be covered, guests you'd like to see, please get in touch via WhatsApp and voice note, please. And that is, the number is 087 291 0507.
Excellent. Sarah, thank you very much for coming in again.